Welcome everyone to episode 23 of HR Leaders Live, the show where we discuss the future of work with today's most innovative and successful people leaders. My name is Chris Rainey, co-founder and CEO at HRD Leaders. As always, I'm joined by my partners in crime, Jill Katz and Matt Burns. Hi guys, how are you doing?
Morning.
I'm doing great. Matt had just mentioned some type of change to his hair. So after we introduce our special guest today, we might want to take a moment to understand what that might be.
Okay, thanks, Jill. The important things in the beginning. Today's special guest is Meeta Malik. Meeta is the head of diversity and cross-cultural marketing at Unilever. Meeta, welcome to the show. How are you?
Good. I'm great this morning. Thank you for having me.
You're probably wondering, what have I got myself into by this stage? So there's no going back, unfortunately.
That's all right. I'm in it to win it. Let's go.
No problem. Before we jump in, Meeta, give our listeners a little bit of information about yourself personally and then your journey to where we are today.
Well, yes. Thank you for having me. I'm a marketer now in HR professional, and I've been in my job for now 3 years, and I'm really passionate about storytelling, and that's something that's really been driving force in my life. And aside from work, the most important thing I do is I'm a mom to two. So I have Jay, who's going to be 6, and Priya, who's 3, and I have a great husband, Piyush, who's also working. So we have a very busy household.
Wow. I've only got one, and it's been 6 weeks. So I've got all to come.
Congrats.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. It's like, 6 weeks. It literally just begun. So it's very fun. Well, thanks very much for that. Jill, I know you had a question. You want to kick off?
Well, first I want to hear quickly about Matt's hair, but then I want to get to a lot of what Meeta has done, because I'm incredibly excited to have Meeta Malik on the show today, particularly because of what I've learned about Meeta's journey. But before we get there, Matt, you mentioned that your hair regime has changed and it's become a little easier, and I'm sure our listeners would like to hear, and it's actually apropos because Unilever, where Meeta works, has a huge array of products, and I'm sure that Meeta will talk to us about it, but maybe you'll start today by telling us, what have you done to make your hair regime a little bit easier, and what is your favorite hair product?
Oh God.
Good morning. I don't know that it's changed. It's really simple. I get up in the morning, I have a shower, I put goop in it, and then I come on the show.
That's it. Good.
I'm disappointed in your answer, and what I would suggest is that by the end of the show, we come back to that. And so I'll come back to you. You should be thinking about your product. And Meeta, I'd like to start off by talking to you. What I love is that you introduce yourself as a marketer in HR. And that is so interesting, and it's particularly interesting for our show.
Yep.
Because typically who we bring on our show are people that think of themselves as HR people first. And you landed in HR, you sort of parachuted in a different way. So can you tell us a little bit about your story and what it means to be a marketer in HR?
Sure. I was on a panel recently and someone asked me, how did I get this role? Like I had some really great plan that I had thought of. And the truth is I didn't want this job. So I had a very linear view for myself. I was going to be in marketing, and that's all I was ever going to do. And I had a number of people, including my CEO and CHRO, approach me to say, this is the role for you. And it wasn't until my younger brother and husband said, like, this is the perfect job for you. You're so passionate about diversity and inclusion in your personal life, and it's so important for you to be an inclusive leader. Why wouldn't you do that? So the lesson for me in that was that other people saw a vision for me that I didn't see for myself. And there's a lot of discussion we have at Unilever about how you cast people for roles and cast them for their potential. So things that I'm passionate about, leading large teams, mobilizing movements, really passionate about white space. All of those were things that they were looking for in this role. So it was really, really a good fit, and something that I didn't see. I think one of the biggest learnings I've had in this role is that our consumers our employees rather are forgotten consumers. We don't treat our employees as well as we treat our consumers. And so in that sense, I think one of the first things I've seen is marketing and HR are actually really converging very quickly, as many functions are. And so a lot of the work we've been doing under my leadership is just taking the time to talk to people, which is actually the fundamental thing you do in marketing, is that you take the time to know. I know, Jill, you so intimately well as a consumer, and I know insights, that I can surprise and delight you with the product that might get rid of your flyaways, for example, right? So that's also from an employee experience perspective, getting to know our employees that well. I'm really passionate about, and telling those stories.
Amazing.
So quickly, and one of the things that we'll come back to, because Matt has talked a lot about the convergence of human resources and marketing, and I think together with Chris, this has really been something that we've talked a lot about over the past year. But for those who might not know or understand, what is your job? What do you do?
What do I do? I ask myself that every day. That's a lot.
We all do. We all do.
So I run diversity and inclusion for North America. It's one hat I wear. And what does that mean? I'm trying every day to build the most inclusive culture we can. And that's a journey. That doesn't happen overnight. And there are some things we've done really well and some things we're working on. So that's just simply what I would say. And then there's another part of my hat, a second hat I wear, which is cross-cultural marketing. So we're really passionate about how diversity can transform workspaces and workplaces, but how can diversity transform brands? And so while we're looking at team composition, as so many people are, how many diverse voices do you have around your teams, around a room when you're looking at a project or launching a product? But at the same time, are your leaders increasing their cultural competency? And do they have cultural sensitivity that is so needed in the world today?
What were the main surprises for you when you first took this role? Just coming from marketing over to the HR side, what were there any surprises that come up that you were like, wow, okay?
I had no idea as an employee how many unsung heroes there are in HR, because so much of the work that HR does a lot of times it's behind the scenes. So you could be working hours and hours on an org transformation or org design, and the employee, the consumer, only sees the end product of that. They don't know everything else that's gone on. I mean, there's simple things I've learned, like I took for granted how I got paid, and I used that money to go buy diapers or wipes. Like the machine behind, there's so many systems and things and people working on things that I had no idea. I was really ignorant on. So that was a really big awakening to me. And I think this role also, as I coach people to think about your careers, not like a ladder, but like a jungle gym, it's really given me an inside view into the company in a way that I wouldn't have had by spending time in this function.
One of the things that really stands out for me about Unilever and quite frankly about you, that I think is so applicable to this show and so special, is the topic of purpose. And Unilever is such a purpose-driven organization. And it is so apropos for all of us. And, it's something I'd love to talk all four of us about, that, Chris, even in the past 24 hours, you have really taken the time to talk about your purpose and what has happened for HR leaders over the past year. And Matt, you have in the past 4 weeks literally changed your life.
Yeah, literally.
Your whole life to follow your purpose and announce your purpose. And Mita, I would love to hear yours. So maybe we could talk as a group for a minute about really what it feels like to work for or with a purpose-driven organization, and then really what your purpose is. But actually, Matt, I want to start with you because of
yeah, always hook on that. Great.
Because it just makes me feel good about myself to always go to you first.
Let's mark the date and time. That's probably the shortest question you've ever asked me in a full year.
That's true. Nobody's got 4 different questions in one.
And pick out your favorite question.
Yeah.
So I guess for me, I think at least all of us have worked in big business. And my personal contention, which is mine and mine alone, is that the actual structure of business today is broken. It doesn't make sense. I led transformation for 5 years with a large Fortune 500 company, spent 15 years in HR. I found like near the end that I was really moving things around, but not really fixing the systemic issues. And I think a large part of that is because it's structural. I think organizations are caught in the middle between short-term thinking and short-term benefits, especially publicly traded companies. With long-term change, it needs to happen to transition companies into the new way of working. And I think organizations are struggling with that transition, and you're seeing transformation, restructurings, and job losses, and as a result, big things happening. For me, connecting to purpose was just so important because I looked one day and just said, do I want to keep doing this? Like, do I want to be a cog in the wheel that's not actually making systemic change? I want to just keep things hobbling along. And the answer was no. So I wanted to connect myself to a purpose, but still use the tools and the skills and the experiences and the network that I had developed over 20 years to really enact change on a global scale. So as you mentioned, Jill, I did announce 4 weeks ago the launch of a social enterprise. It's going to raise $1 million for charity in 5 years. And doing so, supporting mental health advocacy and women entrepreneurs, 2 causes that for me are really, really important. And it's a lot of fun to be me right now. So everybody I talk to is just either excited or happy or has a lot of questions. And for me, it's an opportunity to really talk about where I came from and where we're going. And I've been so humbled to hear the responses thus far. So, for me, it's been an absolute blast. And I would just encourage people, a big game changer for me, I had a lot of professional success. I was a Fortune 500 executive at 31. On paper, you would have said, Matt's got it all figured out. But I was miserable. It was only when I connected my skills to my purpose, that's when things really clicked.
Yeah, amazing, Matt. And we're all really excited for you as well. And I think I'm sure Jill would agree, we've seen a different type of energy from you and type of passion over the last few months, which is just it's all there. So really excited for you.
No filter.
No filter. Yeah. No filter anymore. You're right, Jill. Thanks for bringing it up. Before I talk about myself, I love every time I speak to her. I've been doing this for about 13 years now, since I was 17 years old, long time. And every single time I come across a leader from Unilever, always talk with a sense of purpose. If you look at the video that we talk about, Tim Munden, Chief Learning Officer at Unilever, he did a video for us last week, which we posted on LinkedIn. And immediately, within the first 10 seconds of that video, he was talking about the sense of purpose of Unilever and what drives them. Immediately, it's built into the leadership team of Unilever. You can speak to any leader in Unilever, and immediately that they talk about the purpose of the organization. It's quite rare. It's very rare, actually. And again, Mita, the first thing that you brought up was the purpose behind the business. So that's clearly part of their culture and their DNA in the business. And I haven't experienced that within many organizations, if I'm honest, that I've spoken to. I just want to bring that. Secondly, for myself, I'll be honest, I'll be lying if I said this was what was planned out for me. I fell into this by complete accident. I needed a job. I was 17-year-old, didn't have any money, landed in a company which sold tickets to HR directors for a conference. I never really thought about the bigger picture of the fact that, a HR leader attends one of the events, they may walk away with a new idea or inspiration that will then impact potentially hundreds of thousands of employees and their experience. That connection that was never made. It was only when I started this organization that I realized, going to some of our workshops, that wow, that one insight that person took away has affected 10,000 employees in their experience at work. What an amazing thing. And then we kind of sat down as a team not long ago and wrote down our why as a business. And we're like, when you really take it in, you realize that it's not just about selling tickets or putting a workshop together. It's about the impact that we have on millions of employees all over the world, whether it's from listening to the podcast, whether it's them attending an event or listening to our live show right now. The impact that has on the employees and their experience and their workplace experiences, that's why we do what we do. And that's really exciting, because I get a lot of messages, when I put that post out yesterday, Jill, a lot of the messages people sent me was, I don't know how you can do one nearly every day. You do 20, 30 podcasts a month. I'm like, yeah, but if you heard the feedback that I get, and if you receive the messages that I get in my inbox and people saying, that one thing that this podcast guest said was amazing. I've been struggling with that so much. I've been awake at night, Chris, stressing about how to approach this, but I heard it from Jill, I heard it from Matt, I heard it from Mita, and it really helped me know that I can go forward and this is the right direction to take our organization. That is why we do what we do. So I hope that answers your question as well. So yeah, very interesting.
I love that. Mita, what's your purpose?
Yes. So my purpose, as Unilever's helped me discover, is around empowering those who feel excluded to help them find their voice. And I say, and once you find your voice, never stop using it. And that is really actually tied to my personal family history and legacy. So I'm the proud daughter of Indian immigrant parents. My younger brother and I were born and raised here. And my parents are from Calcutta. And my dad's mom was married when she was 12 years old. And my mom's mom was married when she was 10 years old. They were both child brides. Married men in their 20s and really extraordinary women. And that's still happening in many parts of the world today. And for me, when we talk about diversity, inclusion, and gender equality, it can be very theoretical and academic, but for me, it's very much, I'm living proof of the progress that can be made in just 3 generations. So that for me is what really drives me and gets me to wake up every morning and do what I do.
Amazing.
It's amazing.
As a new dad, I want to jump onto this topic. I know one of the things that Unilever was named the #1 company to work for mums, for working mums, right? Which is incredible achievement. Could you tell us a bit about that journey and how you guys achieved that?
Yeah, thank you. We're still celebrating the #1 win in the US for working mothers. So Working Mother Media has been around for over 30 years, and every year they name 100 best companies, and they always have a top 10, but this was the first year they named a #1 company in the US, and it was Unilever. And it has been a tremendous journey, because I'll tell you, 6 years ago, we applied for the list and we didn't even make 100.
Wow.
So it goes back to what I said about, I really feel like we don't spend enough time listening to our employees. We spend so much time listening to our consumers, and they are our employees. And so we have this saying at Unilever called "Every Voice Matters." So a lot of the work we did was, I can't tell you how many people I've met with one-on-one, focus groups, really understanding not just what policies we're going to launch because it's sexy and trendy, but because what is it going to take to make a workplace more inclusive, more welcoming, where people can bring their best selves. And so that was really the start of how we sort of started looking at policies, programs, and culture, to get to the #1.
What's one of the things you did to achieve that? I think a lot of people, you've mentioned one, which is you literally have to meet people one-on-one.
Yeah.
There's no easy way. And yeah, you can have the group discussions, but honestly, those one-on-one conversations in person, you can never replace that, right? But were there any other things that you can give some advice to our listeners that they can do immediately?
Sure. I think one of the things we're really proud of is we have a really agile workplace. I know we've hosted Jill there. Happy to have anyone who wants to come to Englewood Cliffs, New Jersey, and I'll have a cup of Lipton tea with you. But the place, when you walk in, even our CEO and CHRO don't have designated offices. It's all open. So it creates a culture of work-life integration, which is what I am prescribing to. So it is all about my work output and not where I'm physically working for.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that allows and creates a lot of flexibility and still a high performance driven culture. So I think that the agility and the flexibility is huge. I think also going back to, I can give you specific examples. You listen to employees and their stories and what's the insight. So when I joined HR, on that leadership team, my daughter at the time, my second, was only 7 months. I was one of the few who had just recently had a baby. And I said, well, I had 10 weeks maternity leave and I had to save my vacation to extend that, which so many women do. So that's when we decided we're going to go to 16 weeks paid leave plus the 3 weeks vacation. And the 3 weeks vacation is important, right? And that was my personal insight. We also had lots of women coming to us about fertility choices, right? And so we decided to start covering IVF and egg freezing, because even at really, as women were progressing in their career, they still financially couldn't afford that. So those are instances where we've talked to our employees. And the final one, which is really cool and I'm proud of, is that we had a lot of women coming back from maternity leave saying, I'm now traveling and I'm still nursing. So what do you want me to do with my milk? What am I supposed to do with my milk? And there's this fantastic company we partnered with called Milk Store. And it is white glove service. You can be traveling anywhere in the US and you can ship your breast milk back to your baby.
Oh, really? That's cool.
That's brilliant.
That's amazing. Yeah. I've got loads of, I literally, no, not even exaggerating, I just got a delivery of like milk bags next to my desk right now. Oh, yeah? Breast milk bags. I get deliveries to the office now. I'm like, what's these new things being delivered for that exact purpose? And I'm having to like write my dates on them in the fridge, put them in order.
Yes,
it's a whole new experience for me.
Mita, let me ask you this question. There will be listeners who are hearing your comments thinking this is incredible, but I work for a startup or I work for a company that has no budget at all. And we can't afford to invest in some of the amazing things that companies like Unilever invest in. What do we do? How can we make a change? What would your advice be for companies that don't have the kinds of resources as a company like Unilever, but still want to do things that make a really big impact or change.
I think I'd go back to some of very early conversations I had with Working Mother Media, which is a first-class institution. They offer lots of research and support for individuals. But the one thing they said was the one thing you can do to help working parents is create work-life integration and flexibility. That doesn't actually cost anything.
Nothing
it's a
at all.
mindset. It's mindset shift, right? It's again, it's not about that I'm sitting physically in and I'm clocking in, which gone are those days. I'm in at 8:30, I'm out at 6:30, and you can physically see me, but you're just judging me on my work product and my output. And I think that's it's actually operationally probably the most easiest thing you can do. Mentally, I think it's actually one of the most challenging things to do.
Yeah, I'm doing it right now myself. Literally, I came in today, half the day. I spent the morning at home with the baby and my wife. And if anything, I actually got more work done, which was strange because I didn't have the distractions of someone approaching me every minute for a question or, a meeting or, there's always more distractions a lot of times in the office because someone can come grab you and you're moving away. So I think I get more, and you're right. It's all about measuring the output, not the time that you spend in the office. You could be in the office all day long, but if you're not executing on your tasks and getting things done, it doesn't matter. So yeah, I'm literally living that right now. But it is tough, I think, for me, the not having to be able to actually grab someone and have a quick conversation and all those other things. So there's a balance to that I'm trying to get used to. And detaching myself as the CEO, because I want to say, are people working? Even I feel like has Ivan done the new podcast that I've just put out? Has he edited it? So it is difficult. So I do understand why companies struggle with it as well at the same time.
Right.
Yeah. I don't understand.
Oh, yeah.
To be honest. Like I don't, like I've led cross-functional teams most of my life. And my last role, I had a team of 23 and 2 were in my office. 21 were not in my office. If I can't trust you to get your job done, then I have the wrong person on my team, period.
Yep, it shouldn't work.
I don't really, you can work wherever you want, whenever you want. I care about the output. So I understand. I grew up in an environment where most of my coaches, when I first started my career, were baby boomers, and it was bums and seats, and it was punch in and punch out. And if you're not, if you work an extra 2 hours and you're really committed to the company mission, meanwhile, you could be on YouTube for 3 hours watching videos. I mean, time does not equate to quality. And I think that some people work at different paces and work in different situations. And I've just always taken the approach that how do I want to work, which is without a leash. And if you want the best out of me, then you're going to give me the bandwidth and the time and the space to do my job. And that's what I try to extend to people I work with. And again, there's some people that can't handle the freedom of responsibility, and that's fine. I just don't work with those people because they can't demonstrate an ability to get things done. And they're not self-motivated. They don't have that intrinsic motivation. And that's okay. But in this conversation, I think the majority of people that I've worked with are more than capable of handling things on their own and balancing and integrating work and life. And I think we owe them that level of flexibility, especially now where everything's colliding. You can't manage your life in silos. That's not the way things work.
It's the same thing, right? It's all together. I like work-life integration, like you said. He said
it's funny that you bring that up because I would say that that sort of touches on my purpose, Matt, which is that maybe being the oldest person in the group, although looking like the youngest.
Oh, hey. So those cameras and special effects feel.
Yeah, the great lighting in my studio.
Are you using some Unilever products? Yes, you are.
Oh, so many Unilever products today. I'm doused in them.
Are they sponsoring the show now? What's going on?
Good job, Mita. Good job.
Yeah, very well done. I did, in fact, grow up in organizations where it was about FaceTime, where it was about having to be at your desk, where it was about not showing emotion, where when I was pregnant, and I've written articles about this, actually one that was recently published on Working Mother Media, where it was incumbent upon me to make sure that when I was pregnant, I made sure that I didn't let the pregnancy affect me in any way, and that, I let nothing impact me, and I kept going with my career, and I didn't want anyone to think that it made me feel different in any way. And because of some life experiences that I had that were unexpected, and because of a medical trauma, my whole world came to a screeching halt, and it brought my mission to the forefront for me. And it was exactly what Matt is saying, that all of this stuff is absolute baloney in my mind, and that it's really about how you work, not where you work. And as a result of that, I was in fact the first person in a global retail organization to work remotely. And I went up against the CEO and the CHRO of that organization 12 years ago when such a thing was absolutely ridiculous in the United States. And I said, give me 3 months. If I let you down, we'll call it off. And basically then went on to prove that it was possible and that we needed to change minds and broaden the way that people thought. And I'm really proud that I kind of went on a mission from there and helped that organization and then several other organizations to open up their thinking and change their policies, not for me, but so that many other people who had other situations at home, whether they were working moms, working dads, working caregivers, people that had elderly parents at home that they need to take care of, or whatever it wasn't about where their tushy was, because that is so irrelevant when every single one of us has this. And this is how most of our jobs get done. And so I'm with you, Matt.
It's an important distinction because when these rules were conceptualized, there wasn't cell phones. So I remember when I got my first BlackBerry at work, and it was like, I'm so excited. I can now check emails at home. And then a week later, I was like, oh God, now I can check emails at home.
And then you had BBM Messenger, right? And now you can, wait a minute, I can just messenger people. And it kind of went, it's gone
Technology changed, the thinking didn't. So we wonder why there's friction. We're living off of methodologies and philosophies that were conceptualized close to 100 years ago. That's the problem. I mean, I don't know if it's a gender issue in so many words, but what I would say is that my personal contention is that some of these structural issues are preventing a lot of success in business. I actually think the number one untapped resource in business is women, because we put barriers in front of them to have success and to contribute. And as a result, they don't provide the value they could provide if we just got rid of silly, archaic, ridiculous rules around be in the office at 9 o'clock and you have to travel 30% and all these things that we make people have to trade off to show their allegiance to the organization. Show me the output and then put talented people around it. It's a pretty easy path to success.
It's funny, my wife at the moment, she's obviously on maternity leave. She could do her job from a laptop.
Sure.
Anywhere. Literally, she has a huge floor of like hundreds of people work on this big sales, like this big floor, and they all just come in and log into the computer and just sit there the whole day. And I'm like, it drives me crazy because they let her at the moment, when she was pregnant, they let her work from home 2 days a week. But there was no reason why she couldn't just work from home 5 days a week. She literally went to work, logged into the computer, and then just carried on doing the same work.
Now, why does she have to be pregnant to work from home?
And that too, yeah, and that too, Jill. But
crazy.
And the fact that when she goes, we haven't decided, but if she goes back to work, she's just going to be commuting all the way there just to log into a PC and carry on. And this is I'm not going to mention the company on here, but there's a very large company that she works for. And it drives me crazy because whenever we have these conversations, it comes up in my head all the time.
But it's not productive. Think about the time she'd be spending. She's commuting.
Our commute there, our commute back. It's just crazy. And
but let's also go deeper than that, right? Those are the logistics. Now let's think about
financially as well, Jill. For a second, that costs us £1,000 a month because we wouldn't have to have childcare. That much childcare if she could work from home.
And how about her level of engagement and stress and all the things that she will feel in leaving her child and the additional concern that she will feel and the things that she will, all of that we look away from because it's under the surface, but the toll that it takes and the importance that it should have. And that brings in, I think, this whole body of work on humanity in the workplace that we have all put sort of on the back burner, which is a whole nother topic. And, in looking at the time, I want to take a sharp left turn to make sure that I can get one more topic in. And it's the brag button. It's the brag button. So look at Matt. So we often, it's not easy for us as people to brag about the things that we have done, but with the four phases.
Your post, Jill. I've seen your post. You're pretty good at it.
Thank you. Coming from the guy who put up the 30,000 yesterday, I appreciate your mentorship, Chris. I do want to give you, Mita, the opportunity. The Working Mother Media #1 slot, I think, is outstanding, but it would be short-sighted for us to let our viewers and listeners think that that is all that has happened at Unilever since you've been sitting in this chair. And so I was hoping that you wouldn't mind taking a couple of minutes to share with us some of the other proud accomplishments that you and your team have been able to get on the radar screen since you've been in the role, and maybe a couple minutes on how you've done it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, the #1 for working mothers is still one that we're celebrating, which is huge. The other thing we're really proud of, and one of the reasons we did that, is because we're gender balanced at manager level and above for all of North America, which not many companies can say. But of course, that population is a big population of working mothers. So you see how all these things are connected. We've also increased people of color representation, which has been really important as I've led this team. We also, we've put in so much work in the last 3 years that all of a sudden my CEO is like, we're getting all these awards. Are we just applying for awards? I'm like, no, we did the work and we're getting all this recognition. It's really fascinating. So we received 90 out of 100 on the Disability Equality Index. With a lot of passion around individuals with disabilities and allies in the workplace. We also received Best of the Best for Veterans magazine, so also a lot of work around veterans. Diversity Best Practices Inc. as well has an inclusion index that we placed on. We're one of the leading companies in that. So a lot in terms of how we are trying to build an inclusive culture and that intersectionality as well. So, and of course, the last brag point would be Human Rights Campaign, one of the best places for LGBTQ community. We've been a big ally and also to work for. And so that's been also something we're very proud of, to be an ally in that space.
That's incredible. Those are really not easy, highly competitive, and I think really important and attractive lists to be on, but more importantly than just having the accolade, being a place that really truly exemplifies what D&I is about. One topic I wanted to ask the group about that has been brought to my attention a lot in the past couple of weeks is that of mental illness and its place in the workplace, and how in a world of diversity and inclusion, it seems to be less represented than some of the other areas, and yet it is something that impacts and affects so many families across the world. Matt, what have you seen on this topic, and where do you see its place, and how do you see organizations helping people that are dealing with mental illness within their families?
Yeah, I think it's an epidemic. I don't think we actually know the true depths and the consequences that we're experiencing right now. I think we're going to look back at this time and realize that we made a lot of bad decisions as a society and as a culture, and that there'll be a toll for that. I think we still have some work to do to diagnose the problem. I think there are a lot of factors driving it. Work-life integration is one. The fact that we're living longer and we're multi-generational is another. There are times people are looking after not only children, but parents. And that creates stressors, and that creates challenges that are very, very acute, but very real for some people. Then you layer on top things such as diagnosed mental illness, which goes mostly underreported, very undertreated, and completely misunderstood by organizations. So I don't know how to answer that question, Jill, in terms of a problem and a solution, but what I would say is, A, it's a huge problem. And what I would encourage individuals who are watching this or listening to this to do is to give it the same treatment that you would give a physiological opportunity. We are very open and transparent and willing in a lot of companies to give people time off for broken bones and things that you can see and experience and are more visible and more explicit. But mental illness seems to be well, is it really that bad? It's almost back to Mita's earlier comment about HR. When you can't see it, it's what is it really? I can't quantify it, so I don't really know if I believe it or trust it, or how much of it is real. And I would say I've always taken the approach of mental illness that it's real in terms of the person who perceives it, So do you have programs in your organization that give mental illness the same level of treatment that you give to other issues? Do you give people time off when they're having issues around stress or mental illness? Do you have programs and support and employee assistance type, either programs or organizations that are connecting with you and giving services and products and resources for those types of things? Are you providing time and space within somebody's schedule and life to be able to accommodate things like that? So I would, I don't know that, I don't know that we fully understand the issue, but I think we have a long way to go. And I think that we need to start making headway on it soon, because the financial consequences strip away all the things about doing the right thing, but the financial consequences are huge, in addition to just being the right thing to do for human beings.
Yeah, and Mita, Tim Munden's huge advocate, right, speaking towards this, both from his own personal experiences and as the Chief Learning Officer of Unilever. And I know you guys have done so much work that I can't even go into. We have to have a whole another episode talking about the incredible work you guys. And for anyone listening, the podcast I did with Tim Munden it was exactly on this topic. We spent an hour on the podcast talking to this. In fact, Tim's on the show again next week, talking again on this exact topic. And he's actually going to bring on the show a few companies that Unilever is working with to address this. So look out for that, guys. This couldn't be a more perfect organization and meet with you and the team to have this conversation with, because you guys are doing incredible things in this space. And one thing I would say as well, and I agree with everything Matt said, you kind of covered what I was thinking, Matt, but also it's the stigmatism attached to it that people don't want to talk about it. They're worried about saying this to their boss, to anyone, to be honest. And that's the main thing, is that we need to make sure that we let people know that it's okay to talk about it, and it's okay to bring it to their leader, their manager. And a lot of companies need to train and prepare their leaders in their business to be able to receive that feedback and then to know where to direct that individual and what to do with it. Because that's one of the biggest problems, as you said, Matt. People aren't talking about it. We don't even know how big this issue is, really. So, well,
they mislabel it too. I mean, we use the words like stress pretty liberally, and stress is not working towards a deadline on a project. That's pressure.
This is what I mean. It's the label that it currently has, and what's attached to that is one of the biggest problems that we have to overcome.
It's seen as a critical
exactly. That's why when people won't talk about it, they think that maybe they're going to get passed up on that promotion, or that people are going to think less of them. Both, and I can tell you right now, because I not to this extent, but personally, I suffer from anxiety attacks. So I have them quite often, and even telling Shane, who's our business partner, and the team that, I'm not coming in today. Why? Because I'm having anxiety attacks on the way to work because I'm so stressed out with work and the baby and everything else. It's tough for me to say that to him, and it's tough for me to say it to other people. I don't want to tell anyone about it. It's the first time I've even told any of you guys about it. I've been having anxiety attacks all the time. I have them all the time. I suffer from anxiety, and it's tough. It's tough. You don't even know what to do. You don't know where to turn. You don't want to talk to people about it because you're embarrassed. So it's a very important topic for me. So I'm glad you brought it up, Jill. Guys, I'd love to keep this conversation going. We never ever keep it under an hour or 45 minutes. But Mita, really, really appreciate you taking the time out to join all of us on the show. Thank you so much, Jill, for making the introduction as well. It's been a pleasure having you on there. Before we wrap up, Mita, what's one piece of sort of parting guidance that you can give to the HR leaders out there in terms of where they can start in D&I? Because that's the question that I get all the time is, where do I start, Chris? And then secondly, what's the best way for our audience to get in contact with you and reach out if they want to connect with you?
Yeah, my biggest piece of advice is what gets measured gets done. And I'm really passionate about that. So if I go back to my days when I led the hand and body lotion business for the US at Unilever, if I just said I'm going to sell some lotion and see what happens, that wouldn't be acceptable. Yeah, let's just see if we sell some at Walmart or sell some here, right? How is that acceptable in the work we're trying to do? So no matter how big or small you are, start by measuring something, right? I mean, our big journey, which Paul Pullman has led us through, is starting by, balanced slates. Like, start measuring slates when you're for any role, and start seeing who you're putting on the slate. Because guess what? If you don't have any diverse talent on that slate, you're never going to change the culture that you're trying to build. So that I'm really, really passionate about. And I am very active on LinkedIn. Anyone's welcome to reach out to me there, and I'm happy to continue the conversation. And thanks so much for having me this morning. It's great.
It's a pleasure's ours. Pleasure's ours. Well, guys, thanks for listening in, guys. As always, the episode will be available over on the website, hrdleaders.com. All the show notes for an episode will be linked there. Anything we've mentioned, any resources that did come up in the show will also be linked there for you. Apart from that, thank you again, Mita. We really appreciate